August 6th. This is episode 4, and I'm excited. We've got some good traction and good following with this. It's continuing on. We've had some emails come in. We're going to get to some listener questions today. We're going to talk about a couple of markets. You know, in the last few weeks, we've spent some time talking about some Southwest markets. We're going to get out to a couple of the big master plan communities today, because I know we have a lot of relocating clients who listen to this because they're finding it on YouTube and out on Google. And I know that we've got a couple of areas that you know about as well as I do, because I know you've sold some homes in them. And I'm excited about that. And we're going to talk about some more good news, both in terms of the national real estate market and what's going on in the Austin market. So with that, I'm going to just get right into it so we can get through this. I'm going to switch screens here, and let's get into the Austin news. So Perry, we're talking about Austin news here. The first article we're talking is a local article, but in a national press. So here's more national press, and this is talking about the Austin market, and the Texas Association of Realtors says that not only Austin, but the entire market of Texas shows strong second quarter results. And what's interesting about this, and this is the big takeaway about this news, is normally Austin always comes out strong. But in this case, every market in Austin, they didn't have one down market. In other words, everything from the smallest submarkets to the big ones, Austin, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, all came up with statewide sales up. So overall, the entire state, sales are up 13%. And here's a big, big, huge change. If you look at a year ago, inventory was 8.1 months overall in Texas. We're now down to 5.1 months of inventory. So if you look at this Market Watch article, and again, it will be linked in the show notes for episode 4, what the state of Texas is experiencing is almost the entire state is shifting over to a seller's market. We know we're in a seller's market. We've talked about it with multiple offers in Austin, but statewide in Texas, and this is really a huge deal, because I think what this is showing is the economy of Texas is rolling based on job growth, based on low unemployment, based on in-migration, that if you want to use the term the Texaplex, we are off and running and continuing to see strong trends. The National Association of Realtors, as you know, defines a seller's market starting at 6 months or less of inventory. So statewide, you can almost put a stake in the ground and say, if we continue on this trend, any market in Texas can be considered a seller's market pretty quickly here.
It's good news for everyone, even
Absolutely.
buyers.
Absolutely, but I think what's interesting, and if you're a relocating buyer and you're listening to this, you need to be, because other parts of the country, which we'll get into here when we talk about some of the national news, are not as strong. I mean, I think what a relocating buyer coming into Austin needs to understand is we are a strong market, and Austin's considerably better at 3.9 months than this 5.9 months, like we talked about last week on the podcast. So you need to set your expectations such that if you're looking in a very hot market and there's 2 to 4 months of inventory, you need to be ready to buy, and you need to be realistic on what you want to offer. Because I know, Perry, you've probably seen some problems with buyers coming in from out of town, and they're just not realistic on what they want to purchase.
Well, the last 3 episodes, we've talked a little bit about this in different ways, and the real key here is that certain markets, at least in Austin, have even less inventory than others. This is a really good news because it says, hey, all our markets are great, but if you're coming in to certain areas, you need to be ready, willing, and able to put your best offer forward, knowing that you're competing with a shrinking share of available options. I've lost personally by minutes, by thousands, by a number of different ways. I've got one client here I think of in particular. We put maybe $3 million worth of offers down at $350 to $450 a pop, and we lost by minutes, by thousands, by all sorts of different ways. We ended up buying one that actually fell out of contract during the inspection period. We had to come back to them. So making sure you choose your right agent that's willing to follow up on those things is also a really important thing to do.
Absolutely, and I want everybody listening to save that thought, because we're absolutely going to get into that in the question and answer today, because there's a buyer who actually asks about, what do? I keep losing out in multiple offers. And I would definitely say, if you look at last week's episode, we get into the total market overview. We talk about the difference in Austin between the low price points and the higher price points. It also, you'll see some differences geographically, so having a great agent is going to make a huge difference for you. Let's jump into the next article, Perry. This is about downtown again. I mean, downtown continues to be a hot market. Downtown Austin condos and the residential towers seem to be hot, and this is a pretty big deal. This is a decent-sized piece of land that's sold. It's right at Trinity and Cesar Chavez. It closed last week. They haven't actually disclosed the value, but we're seeing land selling for $250 to $275 a foot. And just for reference, this was a little less than an acre, which is about 41,000 square feet is what it was. I went and looked at the parcel map. And for anybody listening, the Austonian, which is the tallest residential tower downtown, correct?
Yes.
That was built on 29,000 square feet of land. So that somebody could put up an even bigger tower or as big a tower on this land, couldn't they?
Absolutely. I mean, I think there are some rumors of what they're doing. They want to put some office space down there, a 30-story office tower. That particular lot, or that piece of property, was the old UT rowing house. So they used to keep all the equipment for the crew of the UT team.
Right.
So that's going to be a really exciting piece of land. It also borders right on Waller Creek, which is right in line with what the Waller Creek. They're doing all that Waller Creek renovations there, trying to create a Riverwalk type scenario like we have down in San Antonio. It's going to be really nice, and I'm excited to see what they bring in there.
I think what's going to be exciting is if you look out a decade from now, with all the new population that'll be here, how much bigger Austin will be, and having what downtown will look like if they get that Riverwalk type Waller Creek project done, which I expect they will, and all these residential towers and this infrastructure builds out, downtown is going to turn into just a spectacular place to live. It already is.
It's just getting better. I can remember moving in 2002. It was really difficult getting a place to eat down there in Red River Barbecue, or Ironworks Barbecue.
Right.
That was the only option we had, which is right across the street from that lot we're talking about now. And
right.
Now, wow.
Absolutely. That is pretty exciting. Let's transition to some national news. This is good news for the market overall. A lot of because I sell options on it, a lot of people nationally and the Wall Street folks pay attention to the Case-Shiller House Price Index. So it's technically called the Case-Shiller S&P House Index for pricing. It increased 2.2% in May. And that's a big deal because if you look at it, it's measuring pricing over 20 cities. It's been down for years. I mean, literally, you can go back and look at years of data, like talking 4 or 5 years. It's been down. And if you look at nationally, and you go May now versus May 2011, we're finally at the point where we're up right around 1% because it's just turned from the standpoint of negative, negative, negative every quarter, every month for years to the point where on a year-over-year basis we're turning the corner. What's interesting about this is if you look at the national versus the local markets, we just got done talking about how strong Austin is. This is the indicator, and I actually did a training when I was back in St. Louis in 2007, and I said we're probably going to look at the national market, and this is interesting, I went back and looked at my presentation, between 2013 and 2015 as really when the all clear bell is sounded. I mean, we're starting to see little blips like this in the Case-Shiller index, but if the economy after the presidential election in the fall doesn't fall off a cliff, continues to grow, we'll probably see the national housing market in this 20-city index or other large, broad measures continue to go towards positive, and it won't just be a month-over-month. It'll be the year-over-year numbers will start to get more positive. I mean, we used to put up year-over-year increases that were huge. We're never going to get back to that again in our lifetime, most likely, because the banking industry has changed. But this is a good sign that housing is getting to the point where it's cleared out a lot of the headwinds. And some of those headwinds we're going to talk about in our next article, but this is another good sign. I mean, if Austin's strong, we want the national economy to be strong because that allows us an opportunity for people to sell their property in other markets. I mean, if you look at the top 5 locations that people move in to Texas and Austin in particular, you're talking about markets that have had bad or poor real estate markets. As they get better, people can sell their property, take a new job, and move into Austin. So it's going to, if anything, a year from now, it'll make things even stronger in Austin. And we'll probably be talking about the fact that migration is continuing to strengthen, because the reason the rental market in Austin is so tight is some of these folks moving in can't buy, right? You know, you're seeing them take down residential houses or condos, and they're renting for a year or two because they can't sell their property back home.
Yeah, they may have may have the wife sitting there waiting to finish up, maybe that one last person that's about to graduate in high school and go to college. I hear that story all the time.
It's interesting because I think that this will help. A lot of people think, well, why do I care about the national data? Well, this is telling me that if we don't see an economic change leading up to in the 6 months to a year after the presidential election, and as you know, I'm an economist by training from Northwestern, so I love to study the economy. So I can tell you, but my expectation is if we don't see a derailment of the economy based on lead up to the election and then the 6 to 12 months afterwards, we will see even stronger conditions based on in-migration, because all these people are going to come out of all these rentals and then be able to buy, because as their markets improve where they are moving from, they're going to be able to sell those houses, and that's going to take demand up yet one more level. And we're already running at 3.9 months of inventory. You can imagine what it would be if we put another 20% more buyers into the market out of the rental housing.
It's amazing.
It's going to be amazing. This is why we love the Austin real estate market. That's for sure. So another good tendency here in terms of the distressed property market. So if you look at Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac put out their serious delinquency rate. These are loans that are more than 90 days past due. This is for June. Look at the numbers. This is over the national market too. They're both improved. Both Fannie Mae and Freddie have improved. One was at 3.53%, down from 4.08. And if you look at the Freddie numbers, it was 4.2% at the peak back in February. That's when they were at the worst delinquency rate. It's down to 3.45. So again, this helps with the national market, because if I'm in a market where I'm trying to sell my house, and I'll tie this down, you're trying to get into Austin, I had to rent. If I'm competing with foreclosures in my old market, whether it's California, Florida, up in Illinois, up in the Northeast, wherever I was, it's going to make it harder to sell my house. As the delinquency rate goes down, the percentage of distressed property in the market goes down. And when somebody's moving into Austin for these Austin relocation clients, it means they're going to be able to sell their house versus having to sit there and wait and maybe rent it. And again, I expect that a year to 2 years down the road, this is going to dump more demand into an Austin market, because we're a net inflow market. You know, and we don't have much distressed property here, so the distressed part of it doesn't really have anything to do with what's going on in Austin. You know, I know that you don't I know you put a video up this week about distressed property, but it's pretty rare that you'll see a lot of foreclosures in Austin, in any particular area.
The farther you go out from the center of town, the more likely there's a distressed property.
Absolutely, and you have to get a ways out. If you're in the central corridor along Mopac, or you're in prime areas, it's very rare, and they tend to go in about 5 minutes when they come on the market.
Absolutely.
Unless they're physically having issues. So
foundation problems or water leaks that are beyond repair. You just don't see very many of them. It's just the areas. Again, it's all about the vacancy. It's all about the occupancy rates that we have, and then high. I looked at two this past week. One was in the center of town, had multiple offers on it in a condo in a high area right off of Far West. And then I looked at one out in the Agave neighborhood, and that one was under contract, but 10 minutes outside of town. They're going.
It's definitely a prime area. So, I don't know that we're ever going to get to talk about the Austin news and not have positive things to talk about. I guess at some point in time.